the west bank of the Elbe, April 1945. At Schönebeck, south of Magdeburg, American engineers have built a temporary bridge spanning the muddy waters. They've named it after their new president, Harry S. Truman, a man most of them had barely heard of just weeks before. With pride bordering on defiance, they've also called it the gateway to Berlin. However, that imposing name would prove to be nothing more than wishful thinking. The direction these battle-weary GIs will march leads not toward Hitler's crumbling capital, but toward something far different and infinitely more haunting. On the other side of this modest wooden span lies territory already under Soviet control. Stalin's armies are grinding through Berlin Street by Bloody Street, building by bombed-out building, while American forces find themselves observers to history rather than its authors. Among those crossing the bridge this April morning is Hollywood director Robert Cohn and his team of military photographers and cameramen. Since D-Day, Cohn has accompanied American troops halfway across Europe, his 16mm color film capturing moments that would define a generation's understanding of war. He has witnessed the liberation of Paris, filmed the collapse of the Wehrmacht, and documented America's inexorable march toward victory. As an experienced filmmaker, Cohn understands the magical and terrible power of moving pictures. Following the historic meeting at Torgau, where American and Soviet forces first clasped hands, Cohn had expected his next assignment to be the ultimate prize, filming the fall of Berlin. The story would write itself, American forces streaming through the Brandenburg Gate, the final collapse of the Nazi regime captured in vivid color. The orders he receives this morning tell a different story entirely. He is to head south, toward Bavaria, where the 99th Infantry Division stands on the verge of liberating something called Dachau Concentration Camp. Cohn had heard whispers, of course, rumors of camps scattered across Nazi-occupied territory, places where political prisoners were held, where forced laborers toiled for the German war machine. The reality of what awaited him would prove to be beyond anything his Hollywood imagination could conjure. Years later, he would write in his personal diary, "Dachau was where I learned about life." On this April morning, though, as his convoy turns south away from their expected destination, Robert Cohn is simply a professional doing his job, carrying camera equipment that would soon record scenes too terrible for fiction. By April 26th, American armor is rolling east of Nuremberg, encountering the last desperate resistance of fanatic Nazis who refuse to accept the inevitable. The war that once seemed might last forever is clearly in its final days. These final days carry their own special horror. Intelligence reports still suggest that Hitler and his closest followers might be holed up in what they call their Alpine Fortress, a mountain redoubt from which they could wage guerrilla warfare for months or even years. It's a fear that gnaws at Allied commanders, even as the evidence increasingly points to this being little more than Nazi propaganda. What Cohn doesn't yet understand is that his 16mm color film, with its brutal clarity and unflinching precision, will soon document not the triumphant end of a war, but the horrifying revelation of what that war had been fought to stop. The bridge they named for triumph has become a passage to something far darker, somewhere that will test not only Cohn's skills as a filmmaker, but his capacity to bear witness to humanity's darkest capabilities. In less than a week, Robert Cohn will stand before railway cars filled with corpses, his camera rolling as he captures scenes that will haunt him for the rest of his life. For now, he is simply a director following orders, heading south toward a place that will forever change his understanding of what human beings are capable of, both in terms of evil and in terms of the courage required to confront that evil. Robert Cohn's convoy rolls south from the Elbe River, away from the gateway to Berlin that never was. He reflects on how far he's come since leaving the glitz of Hollywood. Back in 1942, Cohn was at the peak of his directing career, crafting tales of romance and adventure on sunlit studio lots. When America entered the war, he traded his director's chair for a military commission, determined to document the real drama unfolding in Europe. Cohn's journey began on D-Day, June 6, 1944, when he waded ashore at Omaha Beach with his 16mm color film camera. Unlike the black and white newsreels back home, Cohn's footage preserved the war in vivid, unforgiving honesty. The red of blood against gray sand, the green of fatigues against blue skies. This technical innovation wasn't just about better pictures. It was about preserving the true colors of human conflict for posterity. His orders were clear: film the Allied advance, document the liberation of Europe, and create a record that would stand as historical truth. As the months wore on, Cohn began to realize this wasn't just another production. Each city liberated brought new challenges, testing his skills as both filmmaker and soldier. First came Paris in August 1944. The City of Light erupted in celebration as American troops rolled down the Champs-Élysées. Cohn's lens captured the joy, the flowers thrown at tanks, the kisses from grateful civilians, and the underlying tension. Hidden snipers fired from rooftops, reminding everyone that liberation came at a cost. Here, Cohn honed his technique, learning to frame chaos into coherent narrative. Pushing eastward, the unit reached Nuremberg by April 1945. Once the site of massive Nazi rallies, the city now lay in ruins from Allied bombing. Cohn recorded the devastated streets, the temporary bridges built by engineers, and the curfew enforcements. In his notes, he described the untold misery of civilians, a stark contrast to Hollywood's scripted dramas. The 16mm color film revealed the ashen faces of survivors and the rubble-strewn historic center, making the destruction feel immediate and real. Nuremberg was more than ruins. It was a symbol of Nazi collapse. Cohn preserved American troops entertaining locals with jazz at the former rally grounds, a poignant reversal of Hitler's inflammatory speeches. This scene highlighted his growing awareness. He wasn't just recording events. He was documenting the death of an ideology and the birth of something new. Further south, in Plauen, Cohn's team documented the aftermath of bombing raids that left 80% of the town center in ruins. He shot rubble women clearing debris, their labored movements a testament to survival. A touching moment, an American soldier sharing chocolate with a child, symbolizing hope amid desolation. These images deepened Cohn's transformation, showing war's human face beyond battlefield glory. By late April, the Conv approached Bavaria. Cohn had documented countless liberations. Each city, Paris with its celebrations, Nuremberg with its ruins, Plauen with its quiet resilience, brought him closer to understanding his mission's gravity. His Hollywood-honed eye for drama now served a higher purpose, chronicling history's unfiltered reality. These routine liberations masked the growing horror. Whispers of concentration camps reached the team, though nothing prepared them for what lay ahead. Cohn's diary later noted, "I thought I knew about storytelling, but war writes its own script, one far more terrible than any film." Intelligence reports spoke of Hitler's possible Alpen fortress. Cohn's equipment rolled through Franconian villages, recording white flags of surrender and makeshift point-of-view camps. The routine of documentation continued, though Cohn sensed a climax approaching, one that would test everything he knew about capturing human stories. Little did he know, his path led to Dachau, where the routine would shatter, forcing him to confront evil beyond imagination. For now, though, the convoy presses on, Cohn focuses on his viewfinder, transforming from Hollywood director to indispensable historical witness. The stench hits them first, a smell that defies description: decay, human waste, death itself carried on the Bavarian wind. Robert Cohn's conv slows as they approach the abandoned railway spur outside Dachau Concentration Camp. For months, Cohn documented the war's progression with clinical detachment. That emotional armor is about to shatter completely. 39 wooden freight cars stretch along the abandoned track, doors hanging open like mouths frozen in silent screams. The GIs from Company 1, 157th Infantry Regiment approach cautiously, hands covering noses and mouths. Private Albert Prout reaches the first car and yanks open the heavy wooden door. Bodies, packed floor to ceiling. Men, women, children, 2,310 human beings crammed into these cattle cars and left to die. Some naked, others in striped concentration camp uniforms, all bearing the unmistakable marks of starvation. Many died clawing at the locked doors, fingernails worn to bone. Others suffocated standing up, pressed so tightly together that even in death they cannot fall. Through his viewfinder, every grotesque detail is etched in unflinching color, the saturated film stock refusing to blink at systematic murder. Though his hands tremble, he does not cut the roll. This is the death train from Buchenwald, abandoned by fleeing SS guards who locked these people inside and left them to die of thirst, starvation, and suffocation. The GIs are not prepared for this. These are combat veterans who have seen death across Europe. This is different. This is industrial murder. Soldiers vomit. Others weep openly. Many simply stand frozen, their minds unable to process what they're witnessing. Around the railway cars, more bodies lie scattered in the fields. These show gunshot wounds, prisoners who managed to escape the locked cars only to be hunted down and executed by SS guards in the final moments before the Americans arrived. This is only the beginning. Beyond the death train lies Dachau itself, the prototype concentration camp, Hitler's first laboratory of systematic oppression. Built in 1933, it has perfected 12 years of human misery. Inside the camp perimeter, over 30,000 prisoners, living skeletons, rush toward the fences as they see American uniforms. Their bodies are ravaged by typhus epidemics and starvation. Many can barely walk. Some collapse from the effort of reaching the wire. Deeper in the camp, the horror multiplies. Bodies lie everywhere, naked, emaciated, stacked like cordwood. The stench of death is overpowering. In one washroom alone, 50 corpses are piled, their skeletal forms showing the progressive stages of starvation. Survivors with numbers tattooed on their arms point out SS guards who have disguised themselves as prisoners. The guards are easily identified by their blood-type tattoos, by their better-fed appearance, by the terror in their eyes as justice closes in. Cohn's equipment documents the medical experimentation blocks, blocks 1, 3, and 5, where prisoners were subjected to pressure chamber tests, hypothermia experiments, and malaria injections. The SS doctors treated human beings as laboratory animals, documenting their suffering with clinical precision. The barracks tell their own story. Designed to hold 200 prisoners each, they crammed in 2,000. Men lying on bare wooden boards, 10 to a bunk meant for 2. The typhus epidemic spread through lice-infested clothing imported from other camps, including Auschwitz. That night, Cohn writes in his diary, "It was like wandering through Dante's vision of hell." The literary reference is his only way to make sense of the incomprehensible. His Hollywood experience has not prepared him for this reality, a reality so extreme that only the depths of literary imagination can provide a framework for understanding. The camp's crematorium tells the final chapter of Dachau's efficiency of death. By February 1945, Germany's coal shortage meant the ovens couldn't operate. Bodies were simply stacked outside, piled high like lumber, waiting for mass burial or burning. Along one wall, Cohn records the execution area, complete with blood drainage ditches. Here, prisoners were lined up and shot for infractions as minor as stealing bread while starving. The systematic nature of the killing is evident in every architectural detail. Survivor Edgar Kupfer-Kobowitz preserves the Americans' reaction in his diary. "American soldiers come into the camp to look at us. When one of the officers saw the bodies, it brought tears to his eyes. It is strange to think that a man who had been in a battle and seen so many corpses should weep at the sight of our dead. I know what our dead look like." The sight is so shocking that even the tears of a warrior are understandable. For Cohn, this moment marks a fundamental break. The director, who has confidently documented liberation after liberation, now faces something beyond documentation. His equipment continues rolling. Something inside him breaks. The filmmaker's practiced composure he has maintained throughout the war collapses in the face of systematic genocide. The color film preserves what black and white cannot. The yellow-gray pallor of starvation, the brown stains of human waste, the dark red of dried blood. These images will haunt not only those who lived through this day, but generations who will see them in years to come. American soldiers separate SS guards from prisoners. Justice begins its swift and brutal accounting. Cohn realizes he is no longer just documenting history. He has become a witness to humanity's capacity for both ultimate evil and the courage required to confront that evil. The remaining composure that carried him through months of war documentation has been replaced by something else, the weight of documenting the incomprehensible. Dachau taught him life's gravest lessons, and death, and the thin line between civilization and barbarism that can be crossed with terrifying ease. What follows will test not only the Americans' capacity for justice, but their ability to maintain their humanity while confronting absolute evil. The liberation of Dachau is complete. Justice's brutal accounting is about to unfold. Retribution explodes in an instant. American troops, faces twisted with rage from the horrors they've witnessed, begin separating SS guards from skeletal prisoners. Through the blur of his trembling viewfinder, Robert Cohn records the raw fury, soldiers hurling SS men into walls, survivors trembling as they confront their captors. From Cohn's lens, the scene unfolds like a nightmare sequence he might have directed in Hollywood. This is no script. Guards who moments ago held absolute power now cower, their uniforms stained with evidence of their crimes. One SS man, identified by his blood-type tattoo, begs for mercy in broken English. Cohn's device holds steady, documenting the reversal of power. Cohn pivots, recording as Company 1's soldiers from the 157th Infantry Regiment herd 16 SS men into the coal yard. The air crackles with tension. A young GI mans a machine gun, his eyes burning with the images of the death train still fresh. "They're trying to escape," someone shouts, and gunfire erupts. Bodies crumple against the masonry wall, 12 dead instantly, others wounded and writhing. Through the smoke, Cohn sees the reckoning's brutal math. 25 to 50 SS guards fall in the chaos, some executed by machine gun, others beaten with shovels and sticks by vengeful inmates. He zooms in on one prisoner, emaciated but fierce, stomping a guard's face until nothing remains. American soldiers stand back, some handing weapons to survivors, their silence a tacit approval of this raw justice. Cohn's viewfinder frames Colonel Felix Sparks rushing in, barking orders to restore control. "Ceasefire, that's enough." The reckoning spills over near Tower B. 17 more SS are gunned down, their pleas drowned out by the survivors' cries. Cohn feels the weight of his equipment like never before. Each frame immortalizes not just victory, but the fragile line between liberation and vengeance. From behind his lens, Cohn witnesses the human storm. A GI executing 4 surrendering SS in a boxcar, finishing each with a headshot. Another scene, prisoners dragging capos, the inmate collaborators, into the open, beating them with bare fists until the ground runs red. Cohn's documentary objectivity dissolves entirely. These are no longer abstract horrors, but a direct confrontation with humanity's breaking point. The reckoning reaches its peak at the execution wall, where blood drains into purpose-built ditches. Cohn documents as SS men are lined up, their eyes wide with the terror they once inflicted. Gunshots echo, bodies slump. 30 to 50 total, estimates vary, the viewfinder doesn't lie. Through it all, Cohn realizes his role has evolved. No longer just a director, but a chronicler of moral collapse. Amid the gunfire, Cohn preserves a tense standoff. Brigadier General Henning Linden arrives with his task force, clashing with Sparks over jurisdiction. Sparks, pistol leveled, growls, "If you touch one of my men again, I'll kill you." The moment passes. Cohn's film captures the chaos of command breaking down under the weight of atrocity. The reckoning subsides. Cohn documents the aftermath. Survivors weeping in gratitude, GIs vomiting from the emotional toll. One Polish doctor notes the irony, warriors hardened by battle, now broken by Dachau's truth. Cohn lowers his equipment briefly, his own hands trembling. He's learned that true reckoning isn't just punishment, but the soul's confrontation with evil's residue. The line between justice and barbarism blurs in Cohn's footage. What began as liberation has become a mirror of the camp's own cruelty. Order slowly returns. Cohn knows his color film will force the world to reckon with this day, April 29, 1945, when humanity teetered on the edge. Questions of morality and retribution will haunt these liberators long after the guns fall silent. The reckoning is far from over. With first light filtering through the compound, yesterday's fury yields to structured process. Robert Cohn steadies his viewfinder, hands still unsteady, to document soldiers systematically isolating surviving SS, their disguises peeling away in the pale light. Through his equipment, Cohn records the shift. Where yesterday's gunfire echoed unchecked, now officers bark commands for arrests, binding wrists with rough rope. The line blurs, a GI hesitates, fist clenched, before shoving a guard into a holding pen rather than delivering a final blow. Justice demands process, retribution lingers in every glare. Cohn focuses on the faces. An SS officer, once a tormentor, now stripped of uniform, pleading innocence in broken English. Survivors, voices hoarse from starvation, recount horrors, beatings, experiments, endless roll calls. One Polish doctor, bandaging a fellow inmate, whispers to Cohn's microphone, "These warriors, broken by our truth, now seek balance between mercy and the grave." The reckoning evolves into structured retribution. Colonel Sparks, pistol holstered with eyes still fierce, oversees the roundup. "No more vigilante justice," he orders, his voice cutting through the camp's eerie silence. Cohn's footage reveals the tension. A guard trips, and a soldier's boot connects with a sickening thud, unchecked in the moment. Inside a makeshift command tent, Cohn documents the moral wrestling. Brigadier General Linden argues for immediate trials, his face etched with yesterday's standoff rage. Sparks counters, "We've seen hell, we can't become it." Charges mount, 30 to 50 SS already dead from reprisals, their bodies piled like the inmates they murdered, a grim mirror of the camp's own barbarism. Weeks later, in Munich's occupied halls, Cohn's team reviews the footage as General Patton dismisses all charges against the liberators. "War's fog," Patton mutters, rationalizing the breakdowns. Cohn's diary notes the irony. Justice bends to necessity, retribution excused as fog of battle. His color film preserves unvarnished truth executions by machine gun in the coal yard. 16 SS mowed down as they tried to escape. 17 more at Tower B, their pleas lost to history. Retribution fades into procedure. Cohn's lens widens. Medical teams arrive, tending typhus-ravaged bodies. Food rations distributed to skeletal forms. The haunt remains. Guards march to Nuremberg's shadow, where true justice awaits. Cohn reflects on voiceover. Retribution is fire, justice the slow burn of accountability. Dachau tested both. The contrast sharpens. Immediate retribution's chaos versus justice's deliberate hand. Cohn packs his reels, knowing they've preserved humanity's fracture, punishment's heat cooling to law's cold steel. Scars endure, questions of right and wrong echoing beyond April 29th. Years later, those moral questions still resonate in Robert Cohn's thoughts. Sealing his vivid reels in their canisters, the gravity of his footage settles like fine ash in the silent aftermath. Dachau's wounds engraved on both memory and history. Cohn's viewfinder has preserved more than horror. It has forged an indelible record. The brutal clarity of color film reveals the pallor of starvation, the stark red of blood ditches, images that will challenge denial and shape collective memory. In his diary, he reflects, "Dachau taught me life's gravest lessons, a personal epiphany now immortalized for posterity. The immediate chaos gives way to reflection. Medical teams continue their work. Cohn knows true healing lies in faithful documentation. His footage, sent to Allied command, becomes evidence at Nuremberg. Guards march there facing the slow burn of justice, their crimes exposed through his unblinking eye. Documentation isn't just recording, Cohn narrates. It's a bridge from past to present, ensuring we never forget. The weight of memory presses. Cohn, team spends days shooting, preserving survivor testimonies like Edgar Kupfer-Kobowitz's diary entry of weeping soldiers, recording voices that might otherwise fade. Martha Gellhorn's words resonate. Dachau seemed the most suitable place to hear victory's news, for this war abolished such horrors forever. Cohn ponders if humanity truly learns. His films are warning against repeating history's darkest chapters. Upon Cohn's departure, the camp's legacy endures. His transformation from Hollywood director to historical chronicler complete, he carries the weight of memory forward, ensuring Dachau's lessons echo through generations. The weight of memory will endure long after the last witness is gone.